So there's been reignited controversy these past couple days. Joe Rogan kind of cleared the air on his side of what happened, as to why Kamala Harris didn't end up on his podcast. Obviously, in the new landscape, you definitely want to do podcasts. I think from here going forward, a lot of politicians, especially presidents, will definitely be using um, the new media to, really advertise themselves, market themselves. Um, Obviously, when you're sitting down with somebody for an hour, 2, 3 hours, you have this ability to kind of, you know, show the people your more genuine self. And so, for those who are living under the rock, Joe Rogan is usually kind of, it was for sure, day in, day out, the world's number one podcast. I think there's a podcast that may have taken number one in a recent couple in the past couple weeks. I'm not 100% sure. Um, I do, for the most part, I do like Joe Rogan's podcast. I don't get to watch it as much as I used to. Um, you know, it's very difficult to put 2, 3 hours into listening to his podcast. I know, like, the West Huff was the more recent podcast that I watched completely. A lot of times I just kind of watch a lot of the clips. Um, but yeah, Trump made it. They say it helped sway the election in Trump's favor. I'm not really 100% sure about that. I really just think that there was a lot of things that the Kamala Harris campaign had going against them, and I think they just made a lot of bad decisions. Um, some of the things that she might not necessarily had full control over would have been, um, the economy was in the toilet, inflation was in the toilet. Um, Even though she was supposed to be over the border, I mean, immigration was a big thing. So, the things that she definitely did have control over would have been, prime example, going on this media circuit. Definitely, that was a big issue. Obviously, not separating herself from Joe Biden, um, not really separating herself from Israel. Obviously, the uncommitted vote that was against Joe Biden was huge. The Muslim Americans, especially in Michigan, Dearborn, Michigan, Palestinian Americans, Muslim Americans, that was a big thing. That was a huge sticking point against her. Um, she doesn't have like the same kind of charisma, um, and ability to energize the base as someone like Barack Obama, and Donald Trump. Obviously, she kind of backpedaled on a lot of her stances, whether it was, price controls, money down on housing. Those just a lot of kind of things that she just always, um, backtracked. I think she was just more concerned about her donors. And so, those were a lot of the issues I was kind of against Kamala Harris. Um, but I wanted to kind of show the Pod Save America. Kamala Harris's aides got on there a couple months ago. They were asked about the Joe Rogan podcast. There was, their response. And of course, about a day ago, maybe a day or two ago, Joe Rogan gave his response. So definitely kind of want to review that. But I mean, honestly, I don't think that 100% the Joe Rogan was the deciding factor, but not doing a new media circuit, not doing a media circuit, media push, assuming that, you already had the votes in the bag, assuming that you were going to be able to win the electoral college. I think that was ultimately, a lot of their downfall, plus all the other things that I kind of mentioned, at the beginning. So, yeah, let's take a look at this, and then we'll take a look at Joe, and I'll just kind of commentate as we go.
certainly don't need to funnel everything through one place. We need to have groups that have the ability to reach these very difficult to reach, that they need to go do that and coordinate well. And you don't spending money in duplication after cycle. Let people do what they do station going forward.
Stephanie, one of the, I believe to be the more tedious post-election debates is about, should Kamala Harris have gone on Rogan? Can you just, not to be tedious about it, could you talk a little bit about how close she came to doing it, why it didn't happen?
Yeah, there's a lot of intrigue around this, a lot of theories. It's pretty simple. We wanted to do it. I hate to repeat this over and over, but it was a very short race with a limited number of days. And for a candidate to leave the battleground to go to Houston, which is a day off the playing field in the battleground, getting that timing right is really important. So we had discussions with Joe Rogan's team. They were great. They wanted us to come on. We wanted to come on. We tried to get a date to make it work, and ultimately we just weren't able to find a date. We did go to Houston, and she gave a great speech at an amazing event.
The Beyonce event?
Yes. Well, I'm going to call it reproductive freedom. And because Texas is ground zero for the impact of these Trump abortion bans. There's a story out today, in fact, of another young woman who lost her life because of it. And we were hoping to be able to fit it in around that. And ultimately weren't able to do it. As it turns out, that was the day that Trump was taping his Joe Rogan. Which they had never confirmed to us. We kind of figured that out in the lead up to it. She was ready, willing to go on Joe Rogan. Would it have changed anything? It would have been it would have broken through, not because of the conversation with Joe Rogan, but because the fact that she was doing it. And that was really the benefit of it. Will she do it sometime in the future? Maybe. Who knows? But it, didn't ultimately impact the outcome one way or the other. But she was willing to do whatever it takes.
Yeah, Dan. So what's clear is we offered to do it in Austin. People should know that. Didn't work out. Mm-hmm. I think, maybe they leveraged that to get Trump in studio. I don't know. And then, we were obviously not going to be back in Texas, but offered to do it on the road.
And he wouldn't travel, right?
Right. No.
Yeah, I agree with Stephanie. I don't know, at the end of the day.
So one of the big things is, I think outside of the Snowden pod, Joe Rogan has never did his podcast outside of his studio, ever. In the 10, 15 years that he's been doing this. He's moved his studio in the sense of leaving California, going to Texas. Obviously, he's, redesigned his studio over the time, but it's not like he's ever went to another location to do his podcast. And of course, he's left to do others' podcasts. When you look at the Andrew Schultz podcast, obviously he went there, but to assume that somebody who's never went somewhere else, that they should just do that is a little inconsiderate, especially considering, you're talking about, 99% of the time, the world's largest podcast in the entire world. And you're going to be able to reach a huge demographic. You're talking about some right wing, some left wing. Obviously, Tulsi, Kyle Kalinske, Bernie Sanders has been on the Joe Rogan pod. And then, of course, you start looking at the right wing. Obviously Ben Shapiro, Patrick Bet-David. I really wouldn't consider Dave Smith right wing. He's more libertarian, which kind of still falls in the right wing spectrum. And obviously had Trump on. So, you look at it from that perspective, Joe Rogan has a huge base, and it's not just one demographic. You know, they like to kind of say he's right wing, but the reality is, yeah, he hunts, he shoots, um, but I mean, from what I know, you know, he does support pro-choice, pro-weed. He has had very challenging statements and historical remarks against a lot of the. I don't fuck with Ben Shapiro, as y'all know. So Ben Shapiro is definitely talking kind of greasy about black folks, and Joe Rogan obviously pushed back on that. So you know, you kind of look at where where he's at. I think that he was on the left. The left moved so far, culturally speaking, maybe not necessarily economically, like working class Bernie Sanders, but they moved so far culturally to the left that, you know, you kind of just, you know, you kind of get lost. And I think, you know, how the left media treated him during COVID was a huge it just kind of pushed him more to the right. Not saying that that's what he is, but I think that, you know, he would be considered more of a centrist with some left you know, with some economic left policies and some, you know, right constitutional ideology. So yeah, this is where they're kind of wrong about that. Um, Definitely, I'm not really sure if they're just trying to save their ass as far as these campaign aides. I think not Hillary Clinton, but that's also one thing too. Kamala Harris was obviously handpicked by Hillary Clinton. I think that a lot of her issue is like her sister, Maya Harris, worked for the Hillary Clinton campaign. So, you know, she's kind of keeping a lot of the Hillary people. She didn't really change any of her people from the Joe Biden campaign. So you're really dealing with a lot of people who technically have a tendency to lose. Um, and so you're surrounding yourself with people who just don't win. Um, so I think that's a lot of the problem with the establishment left. They use a lot of the same guys and gals in their campaigns, and they really don't care about winning. So that's one perspective. I think the other perspective is either her aides really didn't want her on the Joe Rogan podcast, so they kind of sabotaged it. I don't know if I really agree with that. Then there's another perspective where Joe's management team maybe kind of sabotaged it. Um, I don't know if how I really agree about that. And then there's like the third option, which is just uh there was just, which I think is more of a more realistic. I think that potentially Kamala Harris kind of came from this mentality of like she didn't really need Joe to win, that she had it in the bag. So I think that was ultimately what kind of happened.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
I guess it's probably a good time to talk about this. There was a thing that came out recently. There was a book. There was some book about the Kamala Harris campaign where they talked about her getting on this show. And they said a bunch of things that weren't true. They talked to, supposedly talked to like 150 different people about her and, you know, what happened with her coming on this show. I don't know if it's 150. A lot of people. They didn't talk to us, and which is kind of crazy. And which is like, they didn't even ask. But they said things that just weren't true. One of the things they said that weren't true was that we lied about the day that Trump was coming on. No, we just didn't tell you that Trump was coming on. He was already booked a long time ago. This is how it worked. Trump was really easy to book, like super easy. We offered one day. He said yes. That was it. There was no, what are we going to talk about? How long is it going to be? Is it going to be edited? There was nothing.
Yeah.
What's the waiver? Here, give me that waiver. Sign it. It was so easy. So he was already booked. They never committed to doing the show. So all this talk, there was another thing they said that the reason why they did the Beyonce thing, the Beyonce event in Houston, was so that they could be in Texas to do my show. They never agreed to do the show. None of that's true. They never agreed.
That's fucked.
They also said that they sent someone down here to the studio to do a walkthrough of the set. That's not true. The Trump administration did. I mean, if they are trying to say that they, as in the entire federal government, well, I don't think the well, I guess the Secret Service is a part of the federal government. Maybe you can kind of get away with saying that because the Secret Service came down here for Trump and looked around that we sent someone down, but it was not. It was the Trump administration sent them down because they're the only ones that had a date to do the show. These people didn't have a date to do. They never agreed to do the show. This is really important. Even after Trump went on, they offered for me to come to D.C. and do a show with Kamala. But even then, it was the same deal. It was only like 45 minutes to an hour. And, you know, it was not on my set. And I said that, look, he did it here. We should probably do it here. Like, if it's possible to do it here. Obviously, when he did it, it had an enormous result. I'm willing to do the same thing for her. I wanted to release both of them on the same day. This was my goal. I was even trying to figure out if there was a way that I could do it. And I even offered to do it late that night. So the night that Trump came on, I'm like, what if we do her, like when she's done in Texas, if she came here? But no one ever committed to doing it. This is like really important because they keep pretending that I lied or I did this or I did that. They never committed to doing it.
Well,
we went through, I've got a whole, we have all the receipts, by the way.
Of course.
I have a whole list of conversations that took place. They never said she was going to do it. So this whole idea that we fucked her over and then we fucked her over for Trump, incorrect. Just not true.
And she, you know,
But I think it's someone
Sorry.
trying to cover their ass for the fact that she never did it. And if she did do it, it might have had a positive effect.
yeah,
If her and I had a good time and we got along great and she won over, you know, the air quote young male vote, things could have been different.
It
Who
could have-
knows?
yeah, well,
So this guy's probably trying to cover his ass.
that's that's what I'm thinking too, is because
Or gal.
the reaction to her not coming was like pretty big.
But they didn't commit to doing it. This
Yeah.
is the thing. While this guy's saying like that we were difficult to deal with, not true. We were super easy. We made it real clear. But also, it's got to be the actual real show. It shouldn't be some fake version of it where I'm sitting in a conference room. Also, they wanted a stenographer in the room. They wanted staff in the room. They wanted Trump was just in here by himself.
yeah.
Just me, him, and Jamie. That's it. For 3 hours. Like, they wanted to do everything. They wanted it very controlled, and they were really concerned that it wasn't going to be edited. So I don't think they ever really were sure they wanted to do it.
Yeah.
Then once Trump did it and it had this huge response, I think then it was like, what the fuck? What are we doing? He just did it. It's got 50 fucking million views. This is so stupid. Why didn't we do it? And so then there was, even then, when they offered to do it in D.C., my manager asked, is she committed to doing this? If I bring this to Joe, no, she hasn't committed to doing this. Have you brought this to her? Like, they wouldn't even say whether or not she had expressed willingness to do it or whether they were trying to convince her to do it. There was
And so let's just hypothetically take, this is where I'm kind of like leaning towards it. I think Kamala Harris thought she had this shit in the fucking bag. She's the vice president. She's air quotes black. Whole nother topic for a different day. Because she's running on abortion, because of this, because she's got Liz Cheney, because she's got the suburban vote, I think she truly felt like she was just better than Joe Rogan. And so she didn't have to show up to his podcast. That's just what I honestly think. But yeah, I think that maybe her aides really wanted to do it. There might have been talks with Kamala about doing it, but and I think that when shit kind of hit the fan after Trump got on Joe's, then yeah, boom, it's just kind of like, what the fuck do we do?
we know for sure there were some people that were supposedly on her staff that were against her doing it. They thought it was a bad, because, you know, it's a bunch of wokesters. They're basically in a cult. You have a distribute. Like if you're willing to go on Fox News, you talk to what's that guy's name, Brett Breyer,
Yeah.
where they cut that off after 20 minutes. When they did that, that's when I was like, look, it's got to be in the studio. It's got to be in the studio, and it's got to be real. It's got to be a real conversation. I had entertained a couple of times going to, but I was like, 45 minutes is just not enough. You know, you and I have been talking an hour and a half already.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like it's not enough time. You need more time. You need more time to find out what makes someone tick.
And that's I probably what she was afraid of.
Probably what they were afraid of.
Yeah.
Maybe not her. I
Maybe
don't
not
think they
her,
should
yeah.
have been. I
No.
think we would have had a good old time.
No, you're a good guy.
I think we would have had fun.
I think it was a huge mistake on her part. And let's be honest, like it's the kind of thing that it's reminiscent of the forget the congressman that asked Mark Zuckerberg how Facebook makes money. It's just like you're so detached from the modern world. It's like you could spend millions of dollars on all your ad campaign all across YouTube, or you could just go sit in the room with Joe for 3 hours. And I'll tell you which one's going to do better for you, lady. But she picked the ad campaigns on YouTube.
The problem is that I think the people that saw it as they thought they were going to win anyway, apparently. Mm-hmm. And the people that saw it as a negative thought, like, there's been a few blunders where things didn't go well. But I think a lot of those blunders are, I was listening to this woman on the Tucker Carlson show, and she was talking about what Biden was like during the presidency. And one of the things that she said I thought that was very interesting was that there's many people that worked with Biden that said there were moments in his first couple of years where he was very lucid and that he would be actually.
Well, I am going to pause it there. As you can tell, this was posted 2 days ago, already has 2 million views. And just to remind you, this is only the Joe Rogan Experience clips, and he's got literally 8 million people. So now we're not going to go to this podcast, but you look at as many subscribers that he has, almost 19 million subscribers just on YouTube. That's not including Spotify and wherever else the podcast can be heard. So yeah, we have to take a lot of this into we have to take a lot of this into consideration. You're talking about, and then I know Trump got on the Full Send podcast. They got 2.6 million. Then you got, I think he was on Flagrant 2 with Akash and Andrew Schultz. They got, oh no, hold on. Is that official? Or is it Flagrant 2? Oh, damn, I thought he had more. So almost 2 million. And then he went on the Theo Vaughn podcast. And so you're talking about 3.6. So, I mean, she would have easily been exposed to over 20 million people. Whether or not, all of them people would have voted for her, that's neither here nor there. But when you're looking at the fact that she only lost by like percent and a half, I mean, it could have made up the difference. So just for a lot of the people on the left, I mean, you can't just blame the fact that people just voted for Trump as if like the Democrats didn't really play the game. Um, I mean, Trump was Trump was playing chess and the Democrats are playing checkers. So, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why this is ultimately he's back in the office, whether you like him, dislike him, whatever. I mean, in this game, you have to play to win. So and obviously Kamala didn't. So, yeah, it is what it is. But y'all be good, y'all be safe. Peace.